Good Wednesday morning, everyone. We're on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with Matthew Cheslock, an equity trader at Virtu Financial. And Matthew, stocks at record highs, 2,900 in the S&P 500. Can we stay above this level?
Well, it wasn't a surprise to see him break out to highs. I mean, we looked at the beginning of the summer, we looked at what was available for an investor to follow, and things were good for the U.S. economy, and it worked out well for investors. But the old adage goes, never short a dull market. And right now, the next couple of days, it could be a dull market. So that's why we've seen this explosive growth. There hasn't been much to get in the way of it, and anything that we have actually had has been positive on the trade front side, which has provided the next catalyst after the earnings season.
And for anyone worried about the sort of strength of the economy, that 4% GDP reading, well, it was revised upward to 4.2%.
Yeah, that was a good sign as well. A lot of that could be forward purchases and lack of imports that were taken into account after some of the the U.S.-China trade tariff stuff. So that's going to be something that you're going to look at maybe third and fourth quarter to see if that rebalances and maybe that number comes in just a little bit. But for now, that was a positive sign.
And you and I have been talking all summer. You had been calling for a retest of the January highs. We obviously got there. I guess what's the runway over the next month or so? I mean, a lot of strategists now have 3,000 targets on the S&P 500.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're going to start in the short term see some more targets ratchet up because, data is pretty positive about historical price moves after such a strong first half of the year. So, potentially September and October could be tough years, but based on what we saw the first 6 months, we could see a positive move over the next month or so, and then we start getting to midterm elections and things like that, and you're not going to have so much positive tailwinds behind you as far as trade data and things like that. If we solve China, if we solve Canada and Mexico as we expect to, Europe seems to be out of the picture. So there's not much in the way to take us higher. So let's just enjoy this next month, and maybe we get some tailwinds, and then we take us to above 3,000 the S&P.
What about tech stocks? We know so much of the gain this year has come from just a few big tech names, many of them FANG names. Is the FANG trade back on?
Well, it seems to be today. That's what's carrying us. The rest of the market is pretty quiet, but the FANG names are strong. Amazon had some big news today announcing that they might compete against Roku, so that stock's up significantly as far as Amazon goes. But that's just them branching out again and finding a niche where they can develop a little bit further. Their cloud space has been so tremendous as far as a growth driver as well. So I don't think the FANG trade is over by any means. I think people are still piling money into it. You see Apple trading at all-time highs here every day as well. Netflix seems to have rebounded off the lows and is back to about where it was before it sold off. So people are still pretty happy with that trade.
And to your point, Amazon, you mentioned the Roku situation, but Amazon is now on its way to $1 trillion market cap. What is your message to those who are short FANG?
Wow, I mean, eventually, you had some gains that you potentially could have had in the FANG names. You saw some of the names like Facebook and Netflix trade down significantly from their highs, but they've rallied back pretty considerably. People took that as a significant buying opportunity. So if you're going to short those names, you better be careful and you better be nimble, and you better be willing to take some profits if you get a 5–10% correction in a single name.
You mentioned Amazon's cloud strength earlier. We have Salesforce's earnings later today. That's a holding of Jim Cramer's charitable trust, Action Alerts Plus. Is there anything you're expecting from Salesforce? This will be the first earnings report with Keith Block as co-CEO.
Well, this is a time when you have a new CEO that comes in, he can really set the tone for what the market looks like as far as how you conduct yourself on the earnings call and what to expect going forward. And you also have the opportunity to say, what we're doing so well or so much better than in the past. So I think there will be a lot of anticipation, there'll be a lot of eyes on it, obviously, as the cloud space is so strong, but there's not a whole lot else to follow. So sometimes that works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't. So it'll certainly be an interesting call because there'll be a lot of eyes on this one tonight.
And because Mark Benioff, who is still co-CEO, I mean, he was such a public face for Salesforce, so it'll be interesting to see how he shares the stage with Keith Block.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. As I mentioned, this market's been pretty accommodative to tech, so if their numbers are good and their forecast, more importantly, is good, and how they're going to do going forward, it could be a strong day for Salesforce tomorrow.
And we saw with HPE this morning better than expected earnings, another endorsement endorsement of this whole cloud data center theme.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the growth is, and you saw it from some of the bigger names earlier in this earnings season. And that's where we've seen the drivers in some of these names. You're talking about 40% year-over-year growth. Those are some big numbers, and if that's sustainable, if that's able to be continued across the whole space, that's only a positive for anything in the cloud.
And if we're not going to get that kind of growth out of names like Facebook anymore, or at least not in the short term, I mean, that's where you need to flock now. You need to look for the new Facebooks, which could be the cloud stocks.
It certainly could be the cloud. It also could be the pot stocks. You start to see some of those names exploding to the upside. These moves are, reminiscent of what we saw in some of the cryptocurrency type things, where we see a massive amount of investment finding a new home. In technology, it's certainly been the cloud, but you see how quickly money is going to go to where other money is trading. And you want to be, as an investor, you want to be on that momentum, and you want to see when it switches. You need to be nimble enough to get off that pretty quickly.
Okay, Matthew Cheslock, thank you as always.
Sure, Scott.